Hello, I am here today to talk a little bit about the curriculum at a glance documents and the unit plans that were sent out to give clarity. I want to first give a shout out to Mr. Torres, Miss Scott, and Miss Monroe from Red Springs High School. We had an amazing conversation about the unit plans and the pacing and just great social studies history discussion. It meant so much. I learned a lot from them. Uh, it put my teacher cap back on so that I could understand a lot more from the teacher side. So it was a great dialogue. And I said that not only to give them a shout out, but to also let all of the other teachers know, my high school teachers especially, that if you're having some issues, please feel free to contact me through email, through phone, whatever it is. Your questions are very valuable and important and vital for these new standards and for everyone to get a clear understanding of what's going on because a lot of changes have been made. So I'm going to break down the curriculum at a glance, which I like to say pacing guide because that's really what it is, so that you have an understanding of what tools you have, what resources you have, and to understand how to maneuver with all these documents that were sent out at one time. I also wanted to say that I know I received a lot of questions. I think every high school that I went to, um, so far has had a question about conferences. So this Friday we have a meeting with our department and we're going to discuss how what type of conferences you all can attend and who will pay for them. So if that's one of the questions that you've asked me, then I promise to get you an answer very soon. And of course, I know anybody, middle school, elementary, can see this video. The reason why I keep referring to high school is only because these last few weeks we have went to each high school and we have sat down and had discussions with the social studies teachers. So this information is for all social studies teachers, but I was referring to the high school teachers simply because those are the ones that I actually was able to sit down and talk to over the past few weeks. Okay. And so in your Canvas, of course, you go to curriculum. I think I said I'm going to choose seventh grade just to go over it. Okay, so we're scrolling. I'm in the middle school area, of course, and it's almost the same layout no matter what grade. So even if you don't teach seventh grade, this information will be helpful for you all. So I want to start with the curriculum at a glance. Remember, I said that's similar to a pacing guide. I was told that some teachers had not looked at this document. They just went straight to the units. The curriculum at a glance shows you everything that's supposed to happen throughout the school year. And like I said, it kind of gives you a pacing and breaks down each unit. Okay. All right. So as you open it, it gives you all of your units that you're supposed to discuss throughout the year, the pacing, that we hopefully you can stay into that little range, but we know how it works. And it tells you the standards that you're covering throughout that unit. Of course, it tells you a little more things, but I'm trying to hit the main parts. Okay. And so as you dig deep, it gives you the first unit and it breaks it down even more. And so one thing that I wanted to talk about here, it gives you a compelling question that students should be able to master, hopefully at the end. And it gives you an understanding what students should be able to understand throughout this unit. Okay. And so we get into these scope and key topics. I wanted to focus in on this because it's a lot of information that is saying that you have to cover in basically just 1 month. So what I have discussed with certain teachers is that we need to have a clear understanding that you choose what topics you're going to cover within this. Okay. And I think it was unit 4 where I really could show a great example. So I'm going to scroll down to unit 4 so you can get a clear understanding. So in unit 4, you're talking about conflict. That's the main part that you're talking about. Of course, in history, when we talk about conflict, it usually leads to war. war is the biggest conflict that we usually discuss. So what I mean by you have to pick and choose is that these are examples of conflicts right here, this area right here. Of course, in the pacing says 25 to 30 days, it's no way that you will probably hit all of these conflicts in 1 month. So what it's saying is these are examples of conflicts that you can use while you're teaching a unit. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to teach every single one of these conflicts. Okay? It's just giving you examples that you can use. The main part that we need to understand is your compelling question, or of course the standard that needs to be hit. Okay. And we know the standard is about conflict. So what it's basically saying is after you've taught whatever war you want to teach, or whatever wars you want to teach, can your students identify the conflict between two different countries? Let's say if it's two countries at war, will they be able to understand the conflict? Okay. So it doesn't matter what war it is. So one of the examples I used the other day when I was at Red Springs was when I taught seventh grade, long time ago, when I taught seventh grade, one of our standards focused on pandemics and epidemics and diseases. And so the topic that I used was Black Death, or the bubonic plague. And even though that was the disease I focused on, at the end, when they were given a test or when they were evaluated, I could have used malaria, AIDS, any type of disease, smallpox, and to see if they're able to understand how a disease can become a pandemic or an epidemic. How did it lead to that? For them being able to understand and process that. Back then, they didn't have technology. It was nobody on TV telling us to wear a mask or letting us know, and seeing if they can make those connections, that it was not vaccines back then or medicine that they could use to slow down this process. So if students are able to make that connection, for example, with the bubonic plague and compare it to what we're going through with COVID, those are connections that students should be able to make. Okay. And so the reason why I'm using that as an example is because it doesn't matter what the disease is. So in my classroom, I may be focused on the plague, the Black Plague. In the classroom beside me, they may be focused on malaria. It doesn't matter which disease, just long as when you finish that unit, students are able to make the connection and understand how this disease was able to extend as far as it was and the effects that it had on whatever country that you're discussing, okay, or continent that you're discussing. So that's what we want students to be able to do. So it's the same way with, like I said, these conflicts or war. It's not saying that you have to go through all of this whole list of conflicts. It's saying that you went over a few, whichever one you choose, and at the end, your students will be able to understand a war conflict. Okay. And so I'm saying that because a lot of teachers were concerned about the pacing. And of course, in 25 to 30 days, it will take a lot longer if you went through all of these wars to the point where students can understand the standard. So that's why these are just what we call examples or suggestion topics. Okay. And then you go to the next unit. So all of these are listed into your curriculum at a glance document. Now, if we go back and we want to actually go to the document that says unit, let me go down. Seventh grade. Okay, so this is what we just looked at, was the curriculum at a glance. But let's say if I want to go to actual unit 4, which I was just talking about with the war. Now, this is more, of course, it's not a lesson plan, but it's more geared towards the lesson plan side. So it's telling you the compelling question. It has the actual standards. It breaks it down. It tells you the actual standard, but then it also tells you what the student should be able to master. Okay, their objective. And then these are the understandings. I love, when I was teaching, I love to kind of turn these into I can statements, or I would turn these into questions that students should be at as when we end a unit. I know this will basically be my test. If my students can answer these questions, then I know they've mastered that unit. So use these as your guide when you are teaching, but also use it as a guide to see what your students already know. Of course, vocabulary words that you need, critical skills that the kids should know or learn throughout the process. And then it gives you some topics, some actual topics that you can use. So as a beginning teacher, I may not feel comfortable to create my whole lesson. So this is something I may just use the whole thing. It's called a sample lesson. It means this is something that you can use. It's not saying that it's mandatory. You may have a great lesson that you created that masters these statements and the standards up here. But let's say if you don't feel comfortable creating your own lesson, then this is where you can come in and try to use these sample lessons. Okay, so this is not mandatory. What's mandatory is your standards. This is mandatory. When I walk into your room or your principal walks into your room, they should see that this standard is being mastered some type of way in your activity or lesson. Okay. Now, your pacing guide, which is the curriculum at glance that I just showed you, that's where you can pull and create your own lesson. You can pull different topics to create your own lesson for that unit. These actual unit plans were given out for you if you want to use them. These are suggested units that you can use. Especially, like I said, if you're a new teacher, or to be honest, any teacher that doesn't feel comfortable quite yet with these new standards because they're new. Nobody should be at this point using old assignments or old lesson plans. Of course you can, but it should be tweaked a lot because the standards are different. So if you feel like you want to try to use these suggested lessons first, that's great. That's great. But when I walk in or your principal walk in, our main focus is that these standards are being utilized, and this is what the students are going to learn. Okay. And so I want to give clarity for that because I don't want you to get overwhelmed and feel like, oh my gosh, by the end of the month, my kids have to know all of these different wars. They have to know all of these different diseases that led to a pandemic and epidemic. They have to learn all of the, it's no way that they can do that. So you have to pull what you feel will work for your group of students. So a major topic that I love is it talks about women's rights. And with women's rights and of course how women are treated in different locations. So that may be something where you want to do Africa versus Europe. You may do different countries in Africa, women rights in Africa versus women rights in Europe. It doesn't mean you have to do every continent, because that would take a long time. So I'm giving you this information so hopefully this gives a little clarity. If it doesn't, if it confuses you more, please reach out. I'm telling you, it means so much to me when teachers ask me questions and we can come to some type of solution together, because most likely if you have that question, it's someone else that has that same question. So I want to make sure that I'm able to assist and help. And I'm telling you, I love helping and supporting. So if you need me to come out and help in any way, just let me know. And don't forget that it's a coaching form that you can fill out as well. So I'm going to go back and I want to share. I'm going to switch up the Canvas course a little bit. So I want to make it known that a lot of these areas are still empty, and I want to apologize. I've been doing a lot of extra activities, and so it has limited time for me to get in here and dig deep and add. But I'm going to add a lot of information before this month is over. I'm going to add a lot of information for professional development because I've had a lot of teachers reach out already about CEUs. So I'm going to start uploading a lot of PDs that I've seen, that I've heard of, that I think will be great, that comes out from DPI, that are local. I'm going to put all the PDs here. And then I'm also going to be adding a lot more in the communication area. So, of course, this video is going to end up in this communication area because I want to make sure you have whatever you need to be successful this school year. I think that's all that I have, and I hope it helps someone. Please let me know if it helped or if it did not help. I promise you it means a lot when I'm able to communicate with my social studies teachers. And if you need support, especially if you have a substitute on your team, and with social studies, please let me know so I can come out and assist. And if you have brand new teachers, please take time to share the Canvas with them, give them the enrollment information, or you can just email me and give me their name and I'll reach out, because every week we're getting more teachers, and unfortunately it's no way for me to find out who is being added to the social studies department. So it would help a lot if you know you have new teachers on your team or at your school that does not have access to the Canvas. Please let me know or send them the information so they can be added. And I thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.